The night before your observations, you'd be up all night worrying about what if this happened, what if this happened, what if a pupil did this. You know that pupils will push your buttons and try and kind of test your limits. There have been times where I've wanted to give up, nothing feels like it's working. I'm going to talk you through some of my tried and tested behaviour management strategies that I have really enjoyed using in my classroom and that might work for you. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Miss Ross. I make all kinds of different videos about my experiences as a recently qualified teacher. This video is a really important one for me because it's on an area that I have developed so much in since my NQT year, and it was actually an area that when I was a student at university I was really nervous about. I was always really worried about on my placements, and that is behaviour management. Behaviour management is such a tricky one because no class or pupils or school is ever the same. So there's not really a tried and tested strategy that's going to work for absolutely everyone. It is something that I've definitely struggled with in the past. So I thought this video might be helpful for some of you, especially if you are a student teacher or an NQT or just someone that's looking for some more ideas for behaviour management strategies to use in the classroom. I used to always hate being told you're their teacher, you're not their friend. You hear things like that all the time. Don't smile till Christmas. In some ways, I do understand the message behind that. It is important to be firm but fair. You are an adult, you're a professional, you're their teacher at the end of the day, but that doesn't mean that you can't joke around and have fun in the classroom. That doesn't mean that you're not a nice teacher. I was always classed as being too nice. I've had mentors tell me that I have to shout at the kids, that I need to try and assert my dominance and my authority on the classroom. I need to be scarier, I need to be stricter. I've really learned the hard way that that is just not the type of teacher that I am. It takes time to work out the type of teacher that you want to be and the style of teaching that suits you. I feel like I've been able to gain pupils' respect in other ways. It is essential that there is that boundary between pupil and teacher, you know, so that when you do have an expectation or an instruction, then the pupil knows that that's how it is. There have been times where I've wanted to give up and I just feel like I've exhausted all of my strategies and nothing feels like it's working. And that can be a really horrible, demotivating place to be in. But I'm hoping that through today's video I'm going to change your mindset a little bit, hopefully give you some inspiration of some different strategies that I use in my classroom, and hopefully build your self-confidence a little bit and give you the tips that I wish I'd had. So my first tip for managing behaviour in the classroom is to be confident. Now I know this one is so difficult, especially if you are a new teacher and you're just starting off in your career, everything is new, you don't have a clue what you're doing, and it can be so easy to feel overwhelmed and insecure. Something that I learned the hard way during my NQT year is that teaching is one big act. A big part of managing behaviour is how you hold yourself as a teacher. Now that doesn't mean you need to be a big, scary, intimidating, in your face teacher. It is so important to stay cool, calm and collected. You need to remain in control at all times, and pupils need to know that you're in control. It is really important to take a step back and not to rise to it, because it can be easy to. There's definitely been times where I felt like I've wanted to give up because I felt like everything I was trying wasn't working and I just didn't know what to do. It is all about how you carry yourself, being that super confident teacher and putting on that brave face in those types of situations. You know that pupils will push your buttons and try and kind of test your limits, so it's really important to go in there and be really clear of your expectations, which kind of links to my next tip, which is to have extremely high expectations of all pupils and to make sure that they're aware of that. Especially if you are a new teacher or you're going into a new class for the very first time, then it's really important to be in control of the situation and to know what your own limits are. When I was at university and I was a student teacher, I was always really worried about that nightmare moment. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about, but you would always imagine the what ifs in the classroom. What if a pupil did this? The night before your observations, you'd be up all night worrying about what if this happened, what if this happened. But one of my biggest pieces of advice for you, especially if you're a new teacher that is lacking confidence with their behaviour management, is to actually plan for those situations. It is so easy to imagine the worst, so prepare for it. And if you're not sure how you would respond to a hypothetical situation, then just discuss it with a mentor or a more experienced member of staff, so that if the situation ever did arise, then you would feel confident that you would know what to do. It does sound really silly, but practicing helps as well. If there's a fire alarm in the school, then we have practice drills so that we know how to respond in an emergency, and the same thing kind of applies if you're dealing with really challenging behaviour in the classroom. Write out and try and kind of remember key phrases that you want to use if you do get into a situation where things are getting really heated, or you're having to respond to some very challenging emotions that people might be experiencing. Obviously, your first port of call is always going to be your school behaviour policy, so make sure you have read that in detail and you know exactly what's expected. But have a conversation with your mentor, have a conversation with other members of staff in the school. What would you do in this situation? Can you give me some tips about how you dealt with a situation where this happens? You might be lucky enough to be able to observe other teachers and see how they respond to different kinds of challenging behaviour. Honestly, the internet is your best friend, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up some kind of key phrases that you might want to use. As teachers, we're always learning, we're always developing our practice, so don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you are a qualified teacher like me. Know who to call, know what to do, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for the well-being of the pupils in your class, you're in control of your own classroom, and it can be very easy to let your classroom control you. So you do have to make sure that pupils know who the boss is, and you do have to have very clear expectations and very clear limits as well. And pupils do really thrive off of routines, so if they know what's expected of them and they know the boundaries, then they are much more likely to feel comfortable and get into a positive routine in the classroom. Another tip that I have is to make sure that you follow through with any consequences that you give pupils. I will give you some examples later on of some of the behaviour management strategies that I've used in my classroom, but I think it is just really important to point out that if you are, I don't like using the word, but threatening something, then make sure you follow through on that. For example, if you do tell a pupil that you're going to be phoning their parent about something, by not doing that, you are sending all kinds of different messages to that pupil that makes them think that that behaviour might be okay, or that you're accepting it, or that they might be able to get away with that in the future. It's important as well that the other pupils see that there are consequences for that behaviour as well. And alongside that, it's also really important to provide your pupils with an opportunity to reflect on their behaviour. Later on, once the dust has settled a little bit and everyone's calmed down from the situation, it is really important to revisit and try and rebuild that relationship with a pupil. Have a discussion with them about why that happened and maybe what we could do differently next time. Make sure that they understand the consequence for their actions and what it was that they did in order to receive that consequence in the first place. There needs to be a follow-up. There's no point in a pupil showing the same behaviours each week, every week, missing out on reward time or whatever the consequence is that you've decided in your classroom, without that follow-up. It is so essential, especially for maintaining those positive relationships with your pupils. You need to have that chat with them, especially if you're not seeing any change, because you need to work together to build those next steps. My next buzzword is respect. We talk about that word a lot, but what does it actually mean? What does it actually look like in our classroom? First of all, respect to me is about knowing your pupils, is about having those positive relationships with them. That is ultimately the key to success. You want pupils to enjoy their time in your classroom. You want them to feel cared for. A big part of that is listening to what they say, whether that's listening if they want to tell you a story about something that happened to them at the weekend, showing a genuine interest in them and their life outside of school. If there is an altercation that has arisen in your classroom, then it is important to listen to what they have to say and listen to their explanation of the situation, and through that you might be able to gain a better understanding of what it was that caused the altercation in the first place. It can be very easy as teachers just to put the blinkers on and just respond to exactly what it is that you've seen that's happened. They will appreciate it if you do try to understand what their explanation is. The school that I'm currently working in is a rights respecting school. In my classroom we have something called a class charter, which is a little bit like an agreement that pupils and staff all sign. It is really important that children understand their rights, but it's also important that they understand their responsibilities in fulfilling those rights and the rights of others, including their teachers. A really effective activity that I've done, especially when I've been working in the upper school, so some of the older pupils, we'll brainstorm all of the different rights that we remember, and then we will talk about what our responsibilities are, the responsibilities of the pupils themselves and also of the staff in the school in order to fulfill those rights. So for example, pupils have a right to feel safe, but what is their responsibility in making their learning environment a safe place? I got a big piece of like A3 like anchor paper and I wrote on it in black Sharpie, how can we make our classroom a positive learning environment? So first of all, we talked about what a positive learning environment is. And then I asked pupils to write on sticky notes different ways that we could make sure that our classroom was a positive learning environment. And they actually surprised me so much with some of the things that they came up with. And I think the whole process of building this together as a class allowed pupils to have a much better understanding of why we have the rules that we do have. I feel like sometimes the class charter can be treated a little bit like wallpaper, it's just another poster on your wall, but I actually refer to the class charter a lot while I'm teaching. And if there is a pupil, you know, that is disrupting the rest of the class, then I will pull them aside and we'll have a chat about, is everything okay? Is there something I can do to help? Because right now, I don't know if you're respecting the other pupils in this class's right to learn. So I do feel that that was a really effective and important part of building our classroom in the very early days. We also designed a very cool display out of little clapper boards where pupils wrote a right that they have and a responsibility that they have in order to fulfill those rights, and they all signed the class charter. They signed their name on a little piece of popcorn. I'll insert a photo for you, but pupils are very proud of that, and that is just a nice way of displaying our different rights and our class rules that we have. Moving on, my next tip is all about positivity. It is really easy to become clouded with negativity, especially if you are trying to manage challenging behaviour on the daily. It can really take a toll on your own well-being, but it's the same for children. If they are experiencing negative remarks from their teacher all day long and that's all they ever hear, then they are going to feel labelled as that kid that can never do anything right, or that child that's always really naughty, and they're going to associate being in your classroom with negativity, which is why I always try and make my learning environment a positive one, a welcoming one. As I said earlier on, it's all about having high expectations of every learner in your class and trying really hard not to label them based on what their teacher last year said. I feel like there are just some lovely little kids that just slip under the net sometimes because they're always just being good, and reward isn't always about, you know, showering pupils in tokens or certificates. Just acknowledging the fact, you know, verbally that they're doing a great job can sometimes make such a huge difference on a pupil's day. It is so important just to catch those little moments where a pupil is doing something well, and positive praise can be a really effective strategy that will work for some classes, especially some of the younger classes as well. Pointing that out will instantly impact some of the other pupils in the class, and they will start making more of an effort, because most pupils do just absolutely love to please you. I absolutely love just giving out random stickers to pupils and just making them feel special. Recognise the little things. Something that I've incorporated into my classroom this year is a recognition wall, and that's actually something that I picked up from reading a really influential book that has completely changed my insight in the classroom on how I manage behaviour, and that is Paul Dix's When the Adults Change, Everything Changes. If you've not read this book, I really recommend it, especially if you are a new teacher and you're interested in the area of positive behaviour management strategies. He recommended the use of a recognition wall. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen that I've already posted about this on there. I actually use tweets to praise my pupils if I notice them, you know, doing something outstanding, to reinforce the behaviours and the actions that I want to see in my classroom. The really nice thing about it is that pupils can actually recommend their peers if they see them being respectful or doing something kind, and staff can also be recommended to be put on it. And it's so nice just having a positive thing in the classroom. Everyone can get an opportunity to be praised, and even on a bad day, you know, everyone can have brilliant moments, especially for those pupils that really do struggle with behaviour in the classroom. They can have really brilliant moments and be recognised for that on the recognition wall. So that's just the way that I do it in my classroom. I've seen loads of other different things like proud clouds. Again, it's going to depend on the stage that you're teaching and what's more kind of age appropriate for them, but I just love that idea, and it's just so nice having a bit of positivity in the classroom. It can be so easy to focus on the negative sometimes. Try and notice more of the positive and you'd be amazed how much that's going to change your attitude in the classroom. It's all about building that positive, nurturing ethos. I said earlier on, every class is different, every pupil is different, so you're going to have to find a strategy that works for your teaching style, but also something that works for the pupils that are in front of you. There's definitely no one size fits all strategy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm always looking for fresh ideas and inspiration to try and kind of jig things up a bit in my class. So I'm going to talk you through some of my tried and tested behaviour management strategies that I have really enjoyed using in my classroom and that might work for you. Last year I was teaching in a primary 4 class, and the strategy that I used was a mystery learner. How I organised it in my classroom was I had a little bag full of all of the people's names from my class, and every morning I would choose one, sometimes more, names out of the hat to be the mystery learner. Each day the mystery learner had a mission to try and be successful, and to be successful there was a certain criteria that had to be met. I had a big discussion with pupils about what the expectations were for the mystery learner, and at the end of the day, if the mystery learner was successful, then their name would be revealed and everyone would give them a round of applause, and they could maybe choose a prize out of the prize box. As the teacher, you can afford to be a little bit sneaky sometimes, and if you feel like a pupil has, you know, had a particularly good day, especially for those pupils that do struggle with their behaviour in the classroom, you can cheat a little bit and change the mystery learner for that day without the pupils knowing, and that means that everyone gets a chance to succeed. For that reason, I did really like using the mystery learner in my classroom. Some of the things I didn't really like too much about it were the fact that It was quite expensive, especially because I committed to having a prize tin, and at the end of each day a pupil could choose a little prize. So I ended up kind of changing things up a little bit and making it a class reward. And if we had 20 mystery learners over the term, then we would have a huge class party watching a movie with ice cream or something like that. It is difficult because some pupils really struggle to wait for a reward. Some pupils just respond better to instant gratification. You might have to work out something on an individual learner for some of your pupils depending on their needs. But I know that all of my pupils really enjoyed doing the mystery learner last year, so that's a really fun one for the pupils, and I've seen a lot of teachers changing it up a little bit this year, especially with the popularity of Among Us. So instead of the mystery learner, it's been like finding the class imposter. In my classroom last year, I actually had a mix of individual and group points. So for my group points, obviously pupils were sitting in small groups in the classroom, and each group had a little jar on them, and if the group were tidied up quickly or working away nicely, then I would reward them with a crystal. I actually bought these off of Amazon. They're like little plastic crystals, and I just like the fact that they feel a lot more valuable than they actually are. The downside of these was that once pupils started to fill their jars, then they got very tempted to shake the glass jars, and it makes like a really jingly sound, which was very annoying. Another downside was that pupils got really tempted to steal them. I have seen teachers doing it with like pom-poms and things like that, which are probably a little bit less of an expense, but this was my first year teaching, so I wanted to be a little bit extra. I also just thought they looked so pretty and magical. Usually on a Friday, we would count up the jewels that pupils had in their jars, and the winning group would get a trophy on their desk for a week. Little things like that were quite good, especially with the younger pupils. You know, things like having a trophy or sitting on a special seat can really tempt them. Other things that I've experimented using are the classroom economy. Again, this one I feel requires quite a lot of effort. You have to make all of the materials for it. It is quite difficult to maintain. Pupils have class jobs and they earn a salary for that, and they earn like kind of monopoly money, and they can use that money to cash out on different rewards. The annoying thing about it for me is just maintaining it, making sure that the pupils get the correct money each week, and then, you know, making time for pupils to come and buy their rewards. That one personally just didn't work for me because it was just too much effort, and I am really terrible at remembering to do these things. I've tried the whole ladder points thing before. In my previous school we had a traffic light system where pupils would receive a warning and then they would move on to red, and if they were on red then they would lose 5 minutes of their reward time. I've tried so many strategies so far, but none of them I have enjoyed as much as my current strategy that I'm using in my classroom. I'm not going to say that I completely came up with this idea on my own, but I adapted it from something that I'd seen online, and I thought that you might be interested in hearing how it's worked for me. If pupils complete an excellent piece of work or they put in loads of effort, then that pupil can earn a hole punch, kind of like a Starbucks loyalty card, and once they receive so many different hole punches, then they get a reward. So my idea was kind of built on that system. The thing I didn't really like about it was the fact that, you know, some pupils might receive loads of hole punches, some pupils might not, just because they're slipping through the net a little bit. I always feel that individual points are quite unfair because there are always going to be those pupils that receive more points than others. The annoying thing about this system for me as a teacher is just keeping tabs on the whole system. You know, pupils might be needing new cards at random moments. There might be pupils that come to you looking for a prize on a certain day, and it's just quite hard to organise the whole thing. So I adapted this system a little bit to make it work for me. It is a hole punch card, but with a little bit of a difference to make it easier for me to manage as the teacher. I'm going to try my best to explain this. I will insert a photo so that you can see what I'm talking about, but if you are interested in this strategy, then I will put a link to my Teachers Pay Teachers in the description, and you can download the template on there. Every single week my pupils will get a new weekly reward card. Each individual card has their name on it and each of the 5 days of the school week. Hopefully, as you'll be able to see from the photo, each day has 3 different circles on it, and that kind of stands for the 3 different intervals of the day. So the first circle is for break time, the second one for lunchtime, and the third one for the end of the day. When I first introduced these cards in my classroom, I explained what it was I was looking for from my pupils in order for them to get their card hole punched. The good thing about that is that you can change it depending on what you're looking for in your class. I know that some people like to keep behaviour and work kind of separate, but I just decided to put it all into one. So if during the morning session pupils were following my expectations, then they'll get a hole punch on their card for the first circle of the day. The good thing about this is that over the course of the week it can be really easy to track behaviour. So for example, if a pupil doesn't have a very good afternoon, if they're not making good choices, then they don't get a hole punch for that session. And quite often I will just draw a little cross on their card next to the circle, just in case any little accidents happen when the cards are being punched. I quite often choose a pupil people from the class as well. It could be part of your classroom jobs if you have those, to hole punch all of the cards for me, and that is quite a lot of upkeep because I do, as best as I can, try and make sure that pupils get their cards punched, you know, at break, at lunch and at the end of the day. But it doesn't normally take too long, and I think it's worth it in the long term. That's the thing about behaviour management strategies, you have to be willing to really follow through with them, or else, you know, they just become meaningless. Now the cool thing about this that my pupils really like about it is the fact that if pupils get all of the holes punched over the course of the week, then their name goes into a prize draw, and at the end of each week then one pupil will be able to choose an individual prize because they are so amazing and they are consistently meeting my expectation in the classroom. I will put up a photo of some of the rewards that I actually came up with my pupils, and we came up with some really good ones, things that don't cost a lot of money. Now the good thing about the cards is that they encourage pupils to meet my bare minimum expectation, so everyone should be capable of achieving those 3 hole punches a day. But for the pupils that do really struggle with managing their behaviour during the week, you know, the ones that might not ever make it into the prize draw, that get a full perfect week, then I do have something else that's available to them. Each week, if the entire class manages to achieve the minimum number of hole punches, then we get a class reward, which again, pupils have all been involved in choosing. I do understand that we all make mistakes sometimes, that's why I have a minimum amount and there is an allowance for a few little mishaps during the week, but if any pupil loses 5 points or more during the course of the week, then the whole class misses out on their class reward. The good thing is this doesn't demotivate the rest of the class too much because they still have an opportunity to be rewarded for their efforts. I hope I've managed to explain this okay. Apologies if you feel that I've not. Feel free to ask any questions about this strategy and I'll try my best to answer them. And that is all my tips that I have for you today. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Hopefully it has changed your mindset a little bit about how to approach managing behaviour in the classroom. As always, please feel free to get involved in the discussion down below. If you have a strategy that really works for you, then I'm always looking for new things to try, so please do comment down below. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel for all future teaching related content, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!